to others. And then while you're on this call, I think just to jump again, like if people could just, we don't mind, I appreciate you sharing who you are on the chat, but can you just give us who you are and what part of the state you're located in, so at least we can get that. I know a lot of you know each other, but I know that we still don't. So go ahead. Someone needs to start.
All right, I'll start. I'm Melissa Dupke. I am the lead teacher at the Denmark Community School, but I am not there right now. I am at Trees for Tomorrow in Eagle River.
With students?
With students. Although they're not with me. They're at the candy store.
Right. I think I see one on the roof behind you.
Oh, my son crawled out the window.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, only my son would do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dave Parr, Arise Virtual Academy, Janesville, Wisconsin, very southern part of the state.
Luke Stahoviak, DC Everest Idea School, right in the middle of the state.
Joey Zucker, Escuela Verde in Milwaukee.
Al Brandt, Kaleidoscope Academy, eastern part of the state.
Joe Brinks, Innovation STEM Academy in Sparta, Wisconsin.
Angie Anderson, Kenosha School of Technology Enhanced Curriculum in Kenosha.
Chamomile Ness, I'm the Executive Director for the Tomorrow River Community Charter Schools. We're in the middle of the state too.
Jill Gertner, Principal at Clark Street Community School in Middleton, just outside of Madison.
This is Peter Wazarek. I'm director at Northwest Passage High School in Coon Rapids, Minnesota.
Tony Dufek, I'm principal at the Northland Pines Montessori Learning Center, which is up near Eagle River, St. Germain area. So Melissa, you're not too far from us. Thanks for coming to visit.
Bill Saylor, I lead charter school in Boston, right in south central part of the state.
Paul Tweed, Wildlands, Augusta School District, northern central part by Eau Claire.
I think that is everyone. I'm going to put in the chat, and I know some of you are on the phone, so you can't jump in, but I just put the link again to the presentation that I will use to kind of guide our discussion. And I'm going to share my screen. But please, I won't see the chat. So, I mean, if you want to stop me, I don't see the chat when I share the whole screen. So just jump in and share.
Right.
So,
I don't have permission. Or did you just share it? Oh, looks like we're good. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So the first, we're just starting out with there's good news. There's a couple of places where I want to kind of cruise through this agenda because there are some places where I want a little bit of discussion. I need some of your support processing some different things that are coming along, as well as I want to update you with the time logging, the DPI grants. We're going to talk about the School Development Day and the Works Conference, as well as things that we're starting to hear from existing charter schools. So maybe there's ways that we can assist you or each other can assist you as things are coming up that sometimes we forget to put our own oxygen mask on when we're helping others. And then we'll just, we can hash out some concerns that you may or may not have. So to start with that, who has some cool collaborations or things they'd like to share from the past couple of months? Hey, Paula. Don't be shy.
Hello. Are you speaking just about mentor-related fun things?
No, if you want to share something else, I'm okay with that.
Class Act got brave and we decided to join the mock trial competition. So we are going to have our first team of mock trial people competing on February 8th. So that's been really cool. Kids are really enjoying it, and what a fabulous way to learn communication, argumentation, those kind of things.
Great, thank you for sharing.
I can share.
Yeah.
Oh, I spent a day with up at Northern Waters to see what they're doing up in Hayward and do some, I guess, collaborative sharing up there. That was pretty exciting to look at another school that's really similar to ours and be able to share notes that way.
What's the name? Is that the name of the school, is Northern Waters?
Northern Waters in Hayward, Wisconsin.
Okay, awesome. I'm not that familiar with them, so that's cool.
Okay, I can go. So the school that we're mentoring is River Edge, and they put in some yurts that their students are in this year, and we were really inspired by that. So we're going to be putting in 2 yurts next year that will house our early childhood students. And so our governance board for their retreat this year is going to take a trip down and spend the weekend down there checking out their yurts and having a retreat.
Yeah, and I was able to visit River Edge, just working with them on some things, and man, like you walk into those yurts and it's some of the nicest classrooms I've ever been in. The kids just really understand, the moisture, and that moisture just doesn't leave. And so much of taking your shoes off and experience this in a yurt, that they go to class every day in a yurt. You would think it'd be a crazy nightmare. And I'm sure sometimes, they'll tell you that it is, but man, it was pretty awesome to see that in action. Yeah. A couple more. I know there's been some cool collaborations because some of you have bragged to me about it.
This is Paul from Wyland. Been working a lot with the Anthony Acres people, Mondovi School District. They're making a lot of progress in their planning year. I guess the big victory has been they're really recognizing a lot of the structural things they need to have in place and tapping into us as well as other schools to develop a lot of their process, procedures, and infrastructure. So it's good to see that. So they're getting a leg up on that before they have to have kids next fall.
I think I could piggyback off of that one. It's not really collaboration. I'm leaving the community school this year, and we're really focusing on that systems piece. I wish we had done it up front like that. And so we're working on the transition, and I have actually, thanks to Nick, working with a student who will be back next year, an 8th grader. He's going to kind of document important stuff that needs to be shared with the new advisor and be that liaison for that transition. So that should be a pretty exciting process here over the next 5 months.
Where are you going, Melissa?
I have no idea.
Good for you. Good for you.
I'm drawing a circle around Two Rivers, and I'm drawing a circle around Park Falls, and half a circle around Two Rivers is water, so that's not a very big circle.
Nice. I have kind of an interesting thing that's happening right now, which is a collaboration between, so we are failing school district per the state, and it's been very interesting. So we had to develop a full comprehensive improvement plan using DPI's criteria, which has a lot of parallels with our authorizer requirements. And recently some DPI folks on project-based learning came and toured our school, and all of those people around DPI have been talking and trying to figure out how we can be a model school and a failing school at the same time, and why that happens and what that looks like. And so a lot is coming up around cultural competency and our demographics, and so it's been pretty fun. So recently I just connected everyone via email in Madison, and they're wearing their different hats, and they're going to try to figure out ways to streamline kind of the reporting criteria and all of that to make it easier for independent school districts and small school districts, so that we hopefully can maybe just report extensively on one plan instead of 2 or 3. So that's been kind of interesting and fun.
Yeah, and you know, Joe, you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think it's pretty easy as a leader of a school who gets recognized, you know, that you're not doing well on your ACT test. So, you know, you're marked up by DPI, and it'd be easy to blame DPI and all that, but you've embraced it and you're using it as a way to get better. And because of that, you put yourself on the map. And I know when Sarah and I are at DPI, we brag about your school, why you're not recognized as an exceptional school that people should come visit. And I think there are some people at DPI that are starting to really look at what we call multiple measures is just a multiple way of looking at the same test. And I think there are people starting to wonder, are there other ways to be measuring? And I know that people, this is the first time they've wondered, but really starting to look at some of those indicators, and that there are so much more. And in charter schools, we have to keep being loud about that, because we know that the story is much deeper and much broader than what our kids do on some day in the spring. And so I really appreciate that you're sort of carrying that torch, but not playing the blame game. So I think everyone else on this call should just applaud you for that, because I think it'd be easy to blame and then they wouldn't listen. But because you're not doing that, they're listening. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to say, like, as a part of the mentor program, one of the really nice things that we have with our relationship with our school is talking about those open and honest things. You know, like one of our schools came back and got their report card and it was lower than they wanted it to be. And I think just not being content with the low report card, but being aware that there are all these layers in it. And, you know, I don't expect to ever be an A student, you know, just because that's just the way it is. But, so anyway, our relationship is really good with at least one of our schools that we really appreciate.
Hey, Joey, I just want to share, we can probably share some parallel stories there. Northwest Passage is on what I call the naughty list for Minnesota Department of Ed through their ESSA because of our graduation rates, but we serve students who are past graduation date. And so we're on the naughty list, but we're also listed as a model school, and they send people out to see us. So we're living in those dual worlds also. I'm looking at, you know, having this tag on us for one thing, but then having people recognize us for all these other things. So maybe we want to chat at some time about living in those two worlds.
I would love that. I know you're on our to visit list too, so
Excellent.
Let's make that happen.
Good.
Hey, Nick, this is Paul. Can you put together an email or a short list of people who are working down that lane of multiple measures and like the high diversity of ways to look at student success outside of the typical spring testing? Because not only is that relevant to a lot of these new schools we're working with, but it's also relevant to some of the authorizers that have reached out to us that want to be able to build contracts that have a wider berth than, say, school report card kind of thing. We should get a contact that we can talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. And part of this call, I'm going to show you a document that we've started to use, and there's another piece. So Works is going to be presenting to DPI and some people at in Madison on this idea of some multiple measures to really, I mean, yeah, they say multiple measures, but that's not accurate. And so to really look at a holistic way to measure schools, and some of that is not brand new. It's happening around the country, but honestly, it's happening with charter schools and authorizers that get it. That yes, you know, the state accountability test might be a piece of it, but it shouldn't be the only piece. And that we need to do a better job of telling the story. And I think what's so cool about having you all on this call, having mentor programs, you know, individually, we're not that powerful. But when we're together and we have these big conversations, I mean, we have some very successful schools in our state that maybe from one slice of the pie doesn't look that successful. But when we put our voices together and really start to share what's important to families and communities, I think we're moving the needle a little bit with folks, even in some of the cubicles at DPI. Well, let's jump into the logging piece at HeadRush, and I'll absolutely send that email out. and maybe I'll put it as like a Google Doc, and then folks can add to it as they will. And I'll make sure it's shared with everybody that's on this call. So updating in HeadRush, just a reminder, we are logging time in HeadRush. I know that many of you already have logged several pieces of time, and some of you have not. So this is just a reminder to try to get in there and log your time. We're trying to log it quarterly, and that's not because I need you to have logs every quarter, but it's really important to just kind of remember, because at the end of the year, it's hard to remember all the little things that you did throughout the year. So just as a gentle reminder, if any of you want a one-on-one on how to do that, there is a video into that project inside HeadRush that will explain it. Or if you would like to just work with me, I have no problem going through that with you and making sure that you're not logging the time trying on how to log time, right? That you're not spending too much time logging time. So we can try to make that as efficient as possible. Are there any questions or for the good of the group on the logging time? All right, then we will move forward. The Works Charter School Development Day is happening on April 26th. And that's obviously the pre-conference for ISN, which is the following Thursday and Friday. And I just want to shoot this out as individual emails coming from you to your mentor, school, or subgrantees means way more than me sending out a mass email recommending that everybody goes because it's so beneficial to your school. But for you to send it out and say, hey, there's this session that's happening, or I'd like to meet with you there, or can you send someone from your team? Maybe this is a great way for you to get through the bottleneck of the one leader that you always talk to and have them send some of their staff, and you'll meet a couple of their staff members there or whatnot. I think could get some people there, and we could do some, some really heavy lifting, and you could do a lot of the work that you really want to do as a mentor. I'm just going to go off this presentation and go kind of into the schedule so that you get an idea. So this is what the day looks like. In the morning, we're having our educational models fair. Many of you have signed up. I appreciate that, kind of doing some of the models. You're not all represented in here yet. There's 15 of you that have signed up to represent a different infusion. And so to just kind of talk about the different things that you're doing. And hang on one second. Yeah. And so I appreciate that. Then when we get into the afternoon, there's going to be two different, or not the afternoon, but the later morning, there's two different simultaneous things that will be happening. We're going to have some rooms that are roundtable discussions around specific topics. And in those topics, we are going to be talking about how do we deal with students with mental health? What are some of the strategies for working with English language learners? And then along, happening with that, there are some individual lightning sessions. So lots of opportunities for you and your own staff to really drill in and to share best practices with each other. And then in the afternoon, you can either pick a domain so you can learn more about governance, authorizers, or leaders. And if none of those three really fit you, we are running an unconference. And so anybody else that doesn't feel like they want to jump into one of those major domains and you just want to unconference some things because you have some ideas or some challenges that you'd like to bring to the table, the afternoon is an unconference. So I can't imagine that there wouldn't be something for everyone on this call, but then all the folks in your schools and definitely your sub-grantees to benefit from that day. It is free for anyone that wants to come, and it is also kicking off the ISN conference, and I know I don't have to convince you how awesome that conference is. They are still looking for presenters for the Thursday and Friday. So if you already are doing something at a roundtable for our Works Day, or you're doing something as an infusion and you want to just kind of catapult that and do that work at the ISN conference too, I did put the link right in here. I shared this with you in the chat. But if you want to use that link, ISN is still taking proposals on that for that Thursday or Friday. questions, comments on the school development day and kind of the ISN conference that's coming up in April? Yeah, good question. There was about 90% or 90 people there last year, and that's kind of what we're hoping for, about at least 100 people on that works day, and then obviously there's many more that come to the conference. But it's a great introduction for people to the charter world. So if you know folks that are thinking about it, but they don't really know all what it takes, please send them on that day or to advise them. All right, so I always like to update you on one thing that's kind of big on your subgrantees lists. And for those of you on the call that have been subgrantees or are currently, you know that there's sort of the midterm report. And inside this midterm report, they are sharing out their performance measures. This is a little different than the performance measures of their contract. And let's be honest, this is a big stickler for, or a big troublesome spot for our subgrantees, because they have these performance measures in the grant that might have been written with a group of people on a napkin at a bar, right? And nobody remembers what they were because it was written in a grant. And then they have performance measures with their authorizer. And so they end up having like 20 different performance measures and they don't really know any of them. And once you get down to the teachers, they didn't know. So having a conversation with folks about, when you use the word performance measures, yes, there are ones that they need to deliver on in the grant. They're reporting them out here in January, a midterm report on how well they're doing, and then they fill out an end of their year report on how well they're doing. That's just for the grant. They might also have performance measures in their contract with their authorizer. They may or may not be the same. I'm really working with them to try to get them to be similar, so that they're not chasing all of these different goals, if you will. I have a guide right here that I'm sharing with you in this Google presentation you're welcome to use. But it's a guide that I put together that's really starting to drill into different ways that you can measure performance. And it kind of teaches people how to write performance measures in a way that sort of has indicators. What are you actually using to measure? This is where DPI kills me, because we call something a multiple measure, but it's just one test, and measures are tests. So their language is incorrect. But then we have metrics and targets, which would be specific numbers. And then this document does just go into different ways that we can measure. So obviously standard academic growth and achievement is what our state loves, but maybe there's teachers and staff ways to measure performance. There's identified subgroups, gap reduction ways, growth measures to measure performance. I also provided specific goals for folks if they need help. Governance and management ways to measure your school's performance on how well your governance board is growing. School finances, ways that you can measure that. School operations, and then innovative practices, which all of you are experts on in this call, but just different ways to tell the story of your school and what that might look like. So we're working on an actual framework for authorizers to measure this stuff, and so that they can have different indicators to tell the whole story of their charter schools. But this is out there for you all if you recognize right now that your own schools might not have the best performance measures for your authorizer, but it's definitely there for you to work with your subgrantees on helping them just drill into 3 to 5 measures that they can really own and they can really monitor to tell their story. Questions, comments on sort of this? Has anybody seen or heard from their subgrantee during this midterm report time, or have they supported their schools on performance measures?
Yeah, I've chatted with one of the schools that we're mentoring, and they had, to do some corrective action, but they felt really supported and competent in their ability to do that and report on it. They didn't meet one of their performance measures.
Yeah. They can tweak their performance measures in the grant. So just let them know that. They can talk with Chanel at the DPI team, and a really good rationale, you can tell them, on why they want to tweak it is to better match their contract with their authorizer. Now, if it was 10% of our kids will grow in math as measured by, and all of a sudden they're like, 1% is going to grow. They're dramatically decreasing. DPI to not want that. But if it's similar goals, but now they're aligning, monitoring tests, like they had NWEA, but they're going to use iReady or something, like, that totally makes sense. So let them know they're not shackled to what they wrote in that grant, as long as they have a good rationale, and alignment is a good rationale. Any other questions on that before I move forward? All right, so here's the big help that I need from you all. So here's kind of a look at the mentor program, right? So this is number of potential subgrantee schools. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but it could. And so first year, we got 26. This next year, there was an additional 10, right? And so we asked some of you to have more than one subgrantee. So we have 35 right now. Well, a couple of them here, you see we go from 25 to 23. Nice job, Tony. Some of them are done with their grant. And so that number goes down a little bit, but we still have the 10. And if we add on another 20, we're up to 53, right? So you can start to see that the total number of subgrantees could grow before we really start to see it reach its peak and start heading back down, right? So Sarah and I obviously see this as holy cow. Going to expect mentor schools to just keep taking more schools, that might not be the best. And so having said that, here is the 2 goals that we have for our mentor program with the feds. So I want to be very open with you. This is really the only 2 things that we are held to. And then creatively on this call, I'm looking for ideas that you have. 100% of subgrantees will participate in a mentor's, like during the life, at some point during the life of the grant. So yes, if they've already participated in it, they've already participated in it. So could it look differently as they evolve through their 5 years? Absolutely. And then 80% of subgrantees participating in the mentoring program will report having benefited from the program. And we send out a Google survey to folks, and we receive that data. So obviously, we want people to feel like there's some benefit to working with you all and to having a support with Works. And we want everyone to have some interaction, some brush with a mentor during their life of the grant. But otherwise, this is open for, when we look at this kind of last slide, what are some thoughts that we have on this call?
Nick, I see it's going out past 2024, or no, it's not. Actually, no, it's ending at 2022, isn't it? That's just the additional ones would still have grants. Okay.
So you're seeing another issue, right? So
yeah.
Funding for our office ends the 2022. It's awarded in the last year of this grant. You still actually have it during all of these other years. And there's not necessarily money for a mentor or to have as much robust support as they would have right now.
So really the money just ends in 2022 for Works? There's not a way to extend that even though people will still...
You are a very intelligent person, Chamomile. Yes, so it does end, but Sarah and I are trying to use the funding from the first 5 years. And because DPI gets the grant, and then they basically contract with CISA, we're not spending all of that to sort of still have a shell of services down the road for those folks later on, but we're not getting a chunk to be able to pay. Right now we're paying $250,000 just for the mentor program. It'll be a hard one to do, to be honest.
Well, I'm sure you're just planning to scaffold it. So in year 1, these are the expectations. Year 2, they get some during year 3, 4, and 5. It's as needed, but not this like monthly call sort of expectation.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. They're just not going to need as much support after the planning year and the implementation year. I feel like the support is going to be much greater than the years after that.
Agreed.
And so maybe it depends on the type of school too. Like if they're doing a planning year and an implementation year, they would get the same services for both years, since the stuff they're doing is going to vary so much. So for them, year 3, it would start to go down versus a school that's right in or already exists and is getting grant funds, that their amount of mentorship is just not going to be at the same level.
Also, Nick, that other slide where you're trying to show, what was it, 80%? Yeah. What you said, you're collecting that data. Are you reaching your targets?
We are. Yeah. So obviously, you know, the measure of if they're participating in the mentor program was that they were creating action plans inside HeadRush and they were submitting, and everybody did that. So how much they interacted with their mentor, we all know that some people are using you regularly and some people you're really just overseeing their action plans. But no matter how that is, that does count. So the 100% was fairly easy. And honestly, the 80%, we were at 96. I think there was one school that was sort of indifferent, but otherwise everybody had measured that they got benefit from it.
It makes me wonder, I mean, I think you could start seeking funding elsewhere, I think that's the key, is to just make sure that it's effective. And I also do think, like, to your point, 100% participation could be challenged by choice, so to speak. You know, the schools who feel like they don't need the help for whatever reason, like, rather, you know, like, that's just a burden on everyone anyway. And if they're just doing it for the money, like, I feel like there are some schools, like, I feel like our partnership, I mean, we don't even care about the grant, no offense to you and the grant, but like, now that we've forged that relationship, you know, like, we call whenever there's some sort of, you know, crisis, like, what do you do in this situation? You know, those kind of things. And I think that's healthy and extends beyond, I mean, I'm just even thinking right away, like, you know, authorizers could piggyback into this and saying, like, if you have a new school, can you use this model to help your other schools help your new school? You know what I mean? I think, I always feel like there is funding, and it's hard to, you know, you got enough years yet, keep pushing your good program. And I think this is an effective model for lots of reasons, you know, to the point of what Paul was talking about earlier. And like saying, lots of us in lots of different areas are struggling with some of these higher level things of how do we navigate these big picture items. So that's how this could evolve into another phase for those of us who, you know, have made it through the first few years, and now we feel slightly functional. And now how can we use our relationships we have to really push the educational paradigm, you know?
Well, and wouldn't the districts, the schools that have the grants, wouldn't they have the capacity or the ability to write in some of that mentoring into their grant for 2023 and beyond?
Yeah.
So there would be some, it may not come from the original earmarked pool, but you certainly would have that latitude within the grant.
Right. And just to piggyback a little bit, Joey, on what you were saying, just for the good of the call here, this is just, I wanted to show you what our measure is for the feds, right? That's sort of what they're holding us to because we're a contract with them. Obviously, Sarah and I feel like there's way more benefits to the mentor program than this, right? Really creating a powerhouse of charter schools all working together can really move the needle in our state when we're pushing innovation. And obviously there's lots of side effects, really positive things that you have all been doing and learning from each other and kind of growing together. That's not really measurable, that we absolutely recognize. We want all of that sort of included in the thinking. It's just we can get super creative knowing these are the only concrete things we really have to meet. And I would love to hear a couple other ideas, but then I also know, you know, with this many folks on the call, it's not the easiest thing to just, and I would welcome any of you to reach out to me and set up another call, because I value the power of the collaborative here, absolutely, and all of your brilliance. So would love to hear any other ideas or things that you have We don't feel like we're in a desperate spot. We have a couple of years actually of still kind of doing it as is if we need to. But we just really want to be forward thinking, and we want to maximize kind of what we're doing for the state. And using your advice really does, and your thoughts, I think is beneficial for all. Any other thoughts, at least on this call? Don't be shy. Your ideas are good. I will, I guess, treat the silence as you all just really want to have a one-on-one with me, which I totally understand. I get it. But I'm sure also you have 1,000 other things you want to be doing. So we'll move this along, but please, I think as a leader, the worst decisions you can make is try to make decisions in isolation and not recognize the people around you. So I really am not saying this for cliche, and I'm not saying it just for chatter. Please reach out to me if you have ideas or you want to brainstorm. I geek out on this, and I definitely respect your viewpoints. So our conference again is coming up on the 28th through the 29th. Our next call, we will be digging in a little bit more on how we can use your talents better this year than we did last year. I know you were all there and relatively involved kind of one-on-one or two-on-one with your schools, but man, you have so much more to offer than I think we were able to squeeze out of you. That sounds like a bad analogy, but anyway, we would like to take advantage of you in a positive way. And so be thinking about that, and just know that we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next call. We have started planning for the conference already, and we just want to maximize the power of the mentors. So hopefully those dates are on your calendar, because we'd really like you all there, or at least someone in your stead. Here's a couple of hot topics that we kind of get. There's a few of you that have reached out, and definitely our phone is ringing a lot from other charter schools that are not subgrantees, not mentors. And here's the big hot topics is new charter benchmarks are out there. So if you are a charter school that has been in existence but hasn't had to recontract in the last 2 years, there is a new list of benchmarks that DPI is holding you to, and it isn't anything different than what you were supposed to have in your contract in the past. It's just, let's be honest, nobody at DPI was reading your contracts, and now they are. And they're making sure that everything that's spelled out in state legislature is now in your contracts. They've created a benchmark for you to follow to make sure you're meeting that. So if that is you, or that's other people in your district or other people in your area that are like, oh yeah, they're up for recontract, let them know that we can help them with that process. A big piece of that is the second one. We have to be a legal entity. Your governance board has to be incorporated in order to be a governance board. Otherwise, especially if you're instrumentality, pretty easy to understand that when you're an independent school because you're holding your own money and all that good stuff. But as a district instrumentality school, you have to be incorporated because in order to have a legal binding contract, it has to be with 2 different entities. We provide the financial support for you to work with one of our lawyers to get that incorporated status. So please let us know if that's you, and or again, if you know people in your district or in your community that are up for recontracting, we will help them do that entity work. They might as well get started now, even though they might not be contracting for another year. Performance measures, we sort of talked about that. And I don't want to harp on it again, but the big thing that I'm seeing in our state in the last 2 years of the schools that have closed or discontinued, it's for 2 reasons. One, they've sort of been absorbed by the district. They didn't have a strong governance board. And they just sort of saw it as, well, we don't really want to become a legal entity. We're kind of running them like a program anyway. Okay, great. They lose their school code, so it looks like closure. It's not really closure, but anyway, it is dissolved. The second reason is because when recontracting comes back up, authorizers are, well, I don't know if they're successful, or they're this financial burden, or we don't know if they were doing what they said, because there wasn't clear performance measures in the contract that you all as a charter group have been broadcasting to the community. It's on your webpage, it's on your flyer. This is what we're providing, we're measuring it, and here's how we're being held accountable. It's really hard, or actually, it's really easy for an authorizer to say, absolutely, we're reauthorizing. You're knocking all these things out of the park. But that clarity is super important. So we've been working with a lot of people on that. And then just guidance on expansion or replication. So if any of you are out there kind of thinking through that, what that looks like for you, please let us know how we can support that conversation. We recognize it's not for everybody. And in fact, I think I tell just as many people that the grant doesn't make sense for them as much as I tell them that they should be applying for the money. But we'd love to be a thought partner in that process. Any questions on those particular hot topics that we're seeing?
Nick, is there any particular area of the state that seems to be doing the poorest with the performance measures? Like, is it a regional thing?
Doing that's doing a good job of it? Is that what you're saying? Or
well, not, or is having trouble with it, that they need to redo it, especially this idea of they're in the process of rechartering. And
yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a spot in the state. I just see it as a really important issue that is coming a lot. Right, I think this year is 49 charter schools are recontracting. And so those folks have been reaching out to us, and a lot of contracts that I'm looking at, and I'm sure all of you have seen lots of contracts too in the work you've done. I do not see a lot of performance measures in contracts. It might list the tests that you're going to offer, and it might list some of the measures that they're going to use in the contract, but I don't see clear measures. And as we all know, it's either discipline or default. If you are very disciplined about, hey, this is how I want to be measured, this is what a good charter school, or this is what our definition of high performing is by this kind of holistic view, or by default, if you just let people make up what is high performing, they're probably going to fall back on the state report card. Know that that's not always the best measure of the work we're doing.
Well, I do have to say those new benchmarks that the state came out with to rewrite a charter was absolutely amazing. And our old charter agreement didn't even have one iota of a semblance to the new one. I mean, I probably borrowed some of the language from it, but honestly, it was unclear compared to the way it's being done now. So they're really good benchmarks in that regard.
Right. Yeah. And I think on the other side of the coin, if any of you or the folks that you're working with want us to come in to work with the authorizer on just providing more clarity about what it means to be an authorizer, it is a different hat than just being someone that manages schools, even if they're an instrumentality. Just really understanding how do you give a school autonomy but hold them accountable, and be very clear about that. So there isn't any question when you're coming up for reauthorization. Those decisions have been being made for the last 5 years and not on that month's board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that people wanted to happen on this call, or questions or concerns. I know that you're all over the map with different supports that you have for your, your mentor schools. As Joey alluded, some of you are getting calls all the time. Some of you, especially, there's a few of you that have mentor schools that are done this year. Well, there's probably not a ton of work that they're doing, so you're kind of closing up. Some of you are mentoring schools that have been in existence for 20 years and they're expanding or replicating. Yeah, they might feel like they have things better in line. I think just still sending emails with any of the topics we had on this call, just sort of saying, hey, have you thought about this? I'd love to talk with you through that. I know that's a big concern across the state right now. Let me know if you need any support. sometimes we forget to, we forget what we don't know when we get dialed into what we do know. So maybe just sending those little, congratulations type emails. I'm glad you're doing so well. Just wondering if you need any help with this. And then again, please let me know if you want me to kind of come in and help with that a little bit. Some of you have reached out and I've tried to do that. I can't make anybody work with you, right? Nor would you want me to at the end of the day. We just continuously show them that we're there and you're building trust. And at some point, when they need it, they call. But for the good of the group, any questions or comments? Maybe everyone's muted. Did you all know I can't hear any of those?
No, we're not muted. I'm not anyway.
All good, all good. I understand you guys have places to be. Let me know. Please reach out if any of this stuff you want individual help. Was someone going to say something?
Yeah, where do you want us to log the time for the calls?
For the what calls? I'm sorry.
For these calls.
These calls, yeah, I would just log it in underneath any of those three or any of those 4 domains.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you all for everything you're doing for your own students, for sure, and for making a difference in our state. Trust me, the power of all of you doing great things and making people think about education differently is it's being looked at DPI right now. I haven't been that close to DPI in years, so I don't know if that's new, but there is some momentum. So continue the work that you're doing. It does speak volumes.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. See you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Then I'll just stay on if anybody else needs anything.
Hey, thanks, Nick. So
Hey,
sorry I got on here late. So I'll review things and check it out tonight. So,
Yeah, and I have I recorded this, so I'll just stop the record and I can make it available to people too if you want to watch the beginning of it, or you can probably get the gist of it from the slides.
yeah, I'll check it out and everything. Yeah, we just had a lot of things going on lately, so
Totally get it. Yeah, totally get it.
You got my message. So yeah, but we're moving forward. We got it going well. Working with Melissa actually as well on her mid-year report right now too. So